Listen, this is not a who did it story. It's a how did it keep working story. Because the most disturbing part isn't that Jeffrey Epstein existed. The disturbing part is that he operated like a luxury service for years, right in front of everyone, while institutions acted like they were watching a different movie. And America has a special feature, VIP justice. Normal people get consequences. Rich people get options. So today we're not doing internet fan fiction. We're doing the clean version. What's confirmed, what was proven in court, and what the system did then didn't do until it was too late. Because Epstein is dead. But the incentives that protected him, those are still alive. Epstein didn't self-finance. He sold proximity. He sold the feeling of being in the room, private planes, fancy dinners, elite names floating around like perfume. And once you sell proximity, you also sell silence, because nobody wants to admit they were around a predator, especially if they benefited socially. Even if they did nothing illegal, they don't want the headline. So people stop asking questions. Not because they're stupid, because questions are expensive. Questions cost invitations. That's the first lesson. Status is a currency. And in America, status doesn't just buy you better seats. Sometimes it buys you fewer consequences. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's a cultural feature. Now the part nobody wants to hear because it's not entertaining. The core of this case is exploitation and trafficking. Not a one-time rumor, a repeated pattern. And when something repeats, it becomes logistics, recruitment, grooming, payments. And the big secret of every ugly operation, it needs a system. Drivers, schedulers, gatekeepers, people who make the machine feel normal. That's why focusing only on one monster is emotionally satisfying but intellectually lazy. Because monsters don't run alone. A predator thrives when the surrounding adults decide it's easier to look away than to deal with the social fallout of telling the truth. That's the engine. The rest is noise. Here's where this turns into a civics lesson with a punchline. In 2008, Epstein got a plea deal. Plea deal means you plead guilty to something smaller to avoid bigger charges and bigger exposure. And part of the public outrage centers on an NPA non-prosecution agreement. NPA means a deal that limits prosecution under certain conditions. To regular people, that sounds like a cheat code. Because if you're broke, the system tells you, don't mess up. If you're rich, the system sometimes whispers, we can manage this. And right there, people felt it. The justice system has an upstairs and a basement. Epstein lived upstairs for a long time. And here's the part nobody talks about because it sounds too cynical, but it's basically American physics, reputation laundering. If you want to survive scandal, you don't just hire lawyers, you buy legitimacy. You attach yourself to respected places, respected people, respected vibes. You show up around academics, donors, philanthropists, important circles, because once you become the guy who funds things, you also become the guy people hesitate to question. And institutions love money the way sharks love blood, quietly, efficiently, and with no moral debate. So even when rumors exist, the social incentive is to minimize, to rationalize, to keep the party moving. That's how predators hide in plain sight, not behind darkness, but behind polite society. And by the time the system finally reacts, everyone's already invested in not looking complicit. Then 2019 happens, and Epstein gets arrested federally. And the public reaction wasn't shock, it was relief. Like, oh, you noticed? Great, welcome back. Because by then, this story had become bigger than one man. It was about credibility. When a case involves money, influence, and embarrassment, people don't just want an arrest. They want the system to prove it can handle power without flinching. And for a moment, it looked like that might happen. Like the country might actually see a full legal process, testimony, details, accountability, something that feels like the same reality normal people live in. And then the story swerved into the worst possible outcome for trust. Epstein dies in custody while awaiting trial, officially ruled a suicide. And at that moment, America's brain split in half. Half the country said, of course this happened. The other half said, you expect me to believe this happened. And here's the key. Even if you believe there was no grand plot, the damage is identical because the optics are catastrophic. The highest profile inmate in the country in federal custody, and the system looks unprepared, sloppy, weak. And when institutions look weak, people don't become calmer. They become creative. That's when conspiracies move in like squatters, because secrecy plus power always creates mythology. Now let's talk about what's actually settled in court. Ghislaine Maxwell. Maxwell was convicted for helping recruit and groom minors for Epstein. That matters because it confirms an operations layer, someone assisting, organizing, facilitating. And it also matters because it shuts down the lazy excuse that this was just a weird rich guy. No, a conviction like that points to structure. Now, does it answer every rumor the internet has ever invented? No. But it confirms the core reality. This wasn't tabloid drama. It was organized exploitation. And if you want to be serious and not just entertained, you anchor to what is proven. That's how you respect victims and avoid turning this into content sludge. Then there's the money. Because America loves accountability as long as it comes with a receipt. Predators don't operate without money, rails, banks, payments, institutions that keep life running. And later, huge civil cases and settlements enter the chat. Now, settlements are not criminal convictions. They are not proof of every claim. But they are a very American phenomenon. We deny wrongdoing. Here is the check. Please stop talking. And that's why the public feels insane. Because the system can admit risk with dollars while refusing to admit failure with handcuffs. So people walk away thinking the powerful don't get justice, they get accounting. And that perception is corrosive even when the details are complex. Epstein didn't just create a criminal scandal. He created an institutional trust crater. People stop believing the system can police elites. And when that belief dies, everything becomes suspicious. Courts, media, prosecutors, prisons, investigations, and now the internet fills the vacuum with lists, screenshots, fake documents, name roulette, most of it garbage, some of it dangerous. So the story becomes self-fueling. The less clarity you get, the more myth you get. And the more myth you get, the harder it is to get clarity because everybody starts performing for their side. Meanwhile, the victims are still there, watching the country turn their trauma into a team sport. That's the ugliest secondary crime, turning harm into entertainment. So what's the message? Stop treating Epstein like a ghost story. Treat it like a blueprint. Because the next Epstein won't look like Epstein. He'll look like a donor, a consultant, a philanthropist, a guy everyone calls connected. And the system will do what it always does. It will pretend not to notice until the bill comes due, then act shocked on camera. So demand two things at the same time. One, real transparency where it's legally possible. Two, protection of victim privacy, always. Because the public doesn't need a celebrity hunt. The public needs institutions that don't fold when power enters the room. That's the actual scandal. That's the actual lesson. And that's why this story still matters.